Let me start with a story. In the early part of this century, Daimler-Benz company tried to predict about how many cars might there be in the entire world by the end of the 20th century. And their financial people went away and they thought about this and they came back with the figure, perhaps there might be as many as 1 million cars in the world, by the year 2000. Anybody know how many cars were driving around the world in 2000? Over 700 million. Okay, so they were off by a factor of nearly 1,000. For engineers, that's 3 orders of magnitude. And it wasn't because they calculated the finance wrong. It wasn't because they calculated the population wrong. Their central error was they didn't think that the world population would ever support more than about 1 million chauffeurs. And the population of available chauffeurs would limit the growth of the auto business. Now, why do I tell you this story? I'm telling you this story because they made a false assumption about their business model. And many companies in marketing today are making a similar false assumption because 20th century marketing has been all about finding customers for the products available. But today there's a surplus of products and services and channels. Consumers are inundated with products and services. You have 10 choices of almost any commodity that you want to buy, and they are all commodities. So what is the limiting factor for businesses today? It's not the shortage of products, it's the shortage of customers. It's the shortage of paying customers. I think customers should be thought of as a scarce, productive resource, and I'm going to convince you today that your primary mission as a business should be to create the maximum possible value from the customers and prospective customers that you have available. That's all the value your business is capable of creating.
Along with Dr. Rogers, Don Peppers has authored a series of international bestsellers, including The One-to-One Future, which was called one or two of the 3 most important business books ever written by Inc. magazine. Other books in the series include Enterprise One-to-One, The One-to-One Field Book, The One-to-One Manager, One-to-One B2B, Managing Customer Relationships, Return on Customer, and their latest work, Rules to Break and Laws to Follow. These bestsellers push business executives to think differently about their business and have offered some of the most innovative new ideas in business.
So, what is this metric we're talking about when I say return on customer? What am I really talking about? Well, first, can we all agree that customers create 100% of the value that any company realizes? Any operating company realizes 100% of its value at some point at the most basic level from its customers. Now, customers create value for you every quarter. They come in, they buy products, they take services, they cost money to serve, and you report those profits, that cash flow, every quarter. But customers create value in another way also. Customers actually have lifetime values. They have an intention to purchase in the future or not to purchase in the future. And those lifetime values go up and down in value, just like a portfolio of securities would go up and down in value. Imagine this. Suppose you had a customer who called in with a complaint. And he calls in your call center, and for some reason you fumble the call, it doesn't go well, the customer hangs up, he's dissatisfied. Well, your company lost value at that very minute. That instant, the instant that the customer hung up the phone, you might as well have gone to the bank and taken the money out yourself. You lost value. And yet, almost certainly you didn't report it to your shareholders. So, what is this metric we're talking about when I say return on customer? What am I really talking about? Well, first, can we all agree that customers create 100% of the value that any company realizes? Any operating company realizes 100% of its value at some point at the most basic level from its customers. Now, customers create value for you every quarter. They come in, they buy products, they take services, they cost money to serve, and you report those profits, that cash flow, every quarter. But customers create value in another way also. Customers actually have lifetime values. They have an intention to purchase in the future or not to purchase in the future. And those lifetime values go up and down in value, just like a portfolio of securities would go up and down in value. Imagine this. Suppose you had a customer who called in with a complaint. And he calls in your call center, and for some reason, you fumble the call, it doesn't go well, the customer hangs up, he's dissatisfied. Well, your company lost value at that very minute. That instant, the instant that the customer hung up the phone, you might as well have gone to the bank and taken the money out yourself. You lost value. And yet, almost certainly you didn't report it to your shareholders. You lost value just as surely as a stock would have lost value if the company were to report that they expect lower earnings in the future. Return on customer is a metric designed to capture both types of value created or destroyed by customers. Return on customer as a metric could be defined very easily. It's just like return on investment. The return on customer metric works like this. It's the profit you make today on a customer plus the change in the customer's lifetime value divided by the beginning lifetime value. That's your return on that customer. That's the total value you're creating on the customer. And when you use that metric of value creation, suddenly, you have a metric that can balance short-term, long-term problems that companies have. You have a way to actually gauge the effect of a new policy or tactic designed to improve customer satisfaction. You can measure the impact of a call center improvement. You know that you're going to generate extra sales in the future, but how much extra sales are necessary to pay for the cost of the call center and so forth? So return on customer is a very practical metric that companies need to use. It's a very simple idea. It's a balancing short-term, long-term. Let me tell you a story. Little boy had a lawn mowing business in a small town. He had a couple of his friends, and every week they went around to all these yards, and they cut yards for money. One Saturday morning, he goes into a hardware store, and he says to the hardware store proprietor, this is a successful local businessman. He's got a couple of hardware stores. He's 60 years old. He works in his own hardware store every Saturday. And he says, Mr. Jones, can I borrow your phone? And he says, sure, Jimmy, there's the phone. So Jimmy goes over to the phone. He pulls a piece of paper out of his pocket. He dials the number. He says, hi, Mrs. Wilson. I cut lawns for money and just wondered if we could cut your lawn this summer. Oh, somebody's cutting your lawn. Well, are you happy with the job they're doing? You are. Okay. Well, we couldn't tempt you away with maybe a lower price, huh? Oh, well, okay, good. I'm glad you got somebody you can depend on. But I'll tell you what, I'll call you in September, and if you aren't happy then, maybe we'll cut your lawn next year. Would that be all right? Yes, ma'am. Sure will. Thank you. Bye. Hangs up the phone, puts the paper back in his pocket. He only had one number to call. And Mr. Jones is beside himself. He's walking out the store. Little Jimmy's walking out the store. He says, Jimmy, come here, son. Jimmy, I've been a salesman all my life, and you have great technique. Nobody could resist that 11-year-old boy. That's really, really good technique. But you know what, Jimmy? The one thing I know is selling is a numbers game. You got to call more prospects. If you called 10 prospects, you'd be cutting 6 lawns this afternoon. And Jimmy looked at him and said, I'm sorry, Mr. Jones, you misunderstood. You see, I don't really need to cut her lawn. Actually, the truth is, we already cut her lawn. Who's the smarter entrepreneur in this story? What is Jimmy doing? Jimmy's making sure that he's getting the maximum value from each one of his customers. He's making sure that none of his customers is going to be tempted away by one of his competitors for a lower price. That each of his customers is getting good service. That they're not just going to buy from him now, but they're going to buy from him in the future. And that's what return on customer is all about. Jimmy is maximizing his return on customer.
For more information on how you can bring Don Peppers to your next event, contact Peppers & Rogers Group today at 203-642-5525 or via email at michael.dandria@one-to-one.com.